All right, so this is another episode of the Uncivilized Art Podcast. I'm your host, Bumi Hazan, but I go by Bandit Haze in the online space. And today, my guest, once again, the fabulous Sweet Bundy. How you doing today, sir? How you doing?
Doing good. Can't complain too much besides work, but we already did that before.
Yeah, we talked a little bit before we hit record. But yeah, we it's Well, yeah, I guess we'll content. That's all personal stuff. We don't need to. Yeah, we'll leave that. But aside from that, doing reasonably okay. I'm hoping.
Yeah, you know, I'm still
Cool.
alive at least.
Well, you know what? If you're alive, then you got hope. I think that's kind of how try to look at things. If you're alive, you're still breathing, then you just got that little bit of hope. So, and I don't always look that way. Sometimes definitely doesn't always feel that way. But if you're alive, if you're still here, then there's always that little bit of hope that things can get better. And sometimes that's all you gotta hold on to and just keep going. Find that reason to keep going, as they said in The Last of Us.
Yeah, I think I heard that from Morgan Freeman once.
Okay, so I guess The Last of Us a copy of Morgan Freeman, or maybe Morgan Freeman copied The Last of Us. I don't know whoever said it first. I guess somebody said it first, and the other one copied. I don't know. But yeah, we're going to be talking about AI. That's the main thing we're going to be talking about on today's episode of the Uncivilized Art Podcast. AI, of course, has been around for many, many years in various forms, but in recent sort of months-ish, it's been pretty big in the news. So we're going to be talking about that. Before we do that, though, aside from work, what you been up to? Like, what you been watching? What you been playing? What you been reading? What you been doing?
Boy, I just
Let's get a
binge
little update
watched
thing.
for the past month Snowfall. And
Okay, yeah. That's Idris Damson Idris, the British
uh
actor, right?
yeah,
Yeah, I think you were saying that the other day. Like, he does the American accent.
yeah.
Okay, cool. How's
And
how's that
I
going?
finally finished it. I finished
Okay,
it. Uh I highly recommend it to some people, but um if you're sensitive with your emotions, maybe you don't want to go on that ride. But if you're willing to go ahead and take that risk, be my guest. I'm not going to say too much. Uh, I love the show. And just so I give like a little bit of background, I really love The Wire. The Wire is like my favorite show of all time. Oz is closely behind that. Breaking Bad. Those are my top three favorite shows. So you know, just keep that in mind. If you like those shows, then definitely Snowfall is a must see. But even besides that, Snowfall is a great show. Watch it, watch it.
okay.
And if you
Is
don't
it
like it,
is,
then that's okay.
is it one season so far, isn't it?
Of what?
Snowfall. Haven't Is it just one
Hell
season so far?
no. 6 seasons. It's done.
Oh, okay. I say it now. I say it now. 60. Okay.
Yeah, it's
And
done.
what? Okay.
And I watched that for the past month. I binge watched it. I couldn't
Okay. This
stop.
been around all the time, man. I swear I've only been hearing about this show in the last maybe little while. Apparently, it's been around a good while.
Yeah.
2017 it started
It
actually.
was yeah, because it was started by John Singleton. He was at least the creator and executive producer,
Ah, okay.
and of
John
course,
Singleton.
unfortunately, he had
Yeah,
passed away.
yeah.
So they continued the show. Now, some people would argue and say, once he passed away, that the show changed, but I didn't catch that at all. And mind you, I've binge watched it, so to me, it will be more noticeable than it would be waiting a year for the next season. You
Mm,
know, um, and I didn't notice that. For me, I don't even think he wrote. I'm not entirely sure, so I could be wrong. But normally, when it comes to executive producers, they don't really take too much control in the writing room or anything. They just have the final decision on a lot of things
yeah.
because, again, they're just a producer at that point. Now, he could have came up with the premise and was like, "Hey, this is an idea that I want done. Get a team of writers, et cetera, et cetera." That's normally like what a producer would be doing.
Mm,
So I think people just weren't happy with certain events that took place. towards the later half of the show. But to me, nothing stood out where I was like, this is kind of bad writing or whatever. Um, yeah, it's kind of hard to really go into detail without spoiling things, and I don't want to spoil Snowfall. It's
Yeah, no, I think I
an
understand what you're
incredible
trying to say
show.
though. But I think that though, I mean, I've not watched the show, so I don't want to talk too specifically about it. But I'd assume to some degree that whatever amount of creative input John Singleton had on the show prior to his passing, when he did pass, even if they kept like say most of the same writers and most of the same staff and things like that, I mean, somebody dying is going to have an effect on how you write things and how you see things, and your relationship with that person. Like even if John Singleton wasn't, typing, you know what I mean. Even if he wasn't necessarily directly involved, I don't know, but let's say assume that he wasn't directly involved with the writing, just the fact that somebody that you work with on a regular basis passes away, that's gonna affect you in some way as a person, as a creative, and that's gonna
Yep.
reflect in some way on the things that you write and how you write. And maybe it's not going to be super obvious to everybody. It might be something that maybe people who are maybe a lot more familiar with their works that might notice the differences, and to everyone else it might be just too subtle to pick up on. But I'd imagine it would have at least some kind of effects just on the fact that it's a significant thing that happens, and any kind of thing, whether insignificant or significant, and certainly anything significant, is going to have some effects on you and how you see things and how you approach things going forward.
Yeah, of course. Um, Fortunately, you know, to me, it didn't stand out much, and which is a good thing. You don't want to
Mm,
break the immersion, as I always say, when it comes to shows, anything
mm,
fiction. I don't like my immersion being broken. I like to just go ahead, dive in, be fully immersed in whatever I'm consuming, whether it's a video game, show, movie, whatever.
yeah, yeah. No, immersion is important. I think like that's kind of the key thing with a lot of stuff is, well, maybe not everything, of course, not everything needs to be immersive, I know, but just in general, you could make any kind of story about pretty much any kind of ridiculous thing you want, but as long as you could bring people in a way that it becomes believable within the world itself and maintain that throughout, you've done something special, I think. So yeah.
Yeah.
But speaking of watching stuff, I too have been watching some things. And well, mentioned this to you already. Actually, I watched the first season of The Boys. Finally, getting around to
Yeah.
this show. I watched that first season. I think. Well, I finished it. I think last week. So, or in that kind of week-ish period, anyway. So I haven't started the second season yet. I'll be starting that this week. But yeah, that first season, it definitely did something. It was from the very first episode it was just kind of like, okay, I got to see the rest of this. It's like, okay, it's just a very first episode, and of course I'm not gonna go into spoilers here, but at some point, hopefully, God willing, we'll be talking about this show as well, and in a lot more detail. But yeah, certainly from the first episode, I was like, yeah, I got to see the rest of this. And as it progressed, as the story kind of unfolded, and as some of the twists and stuff like that, and you learn more about the characters and more about the world and more about kind of the backstories and the whole kind of thing and how it's all come together. And it's like, yo, yo, I can see why people be talking about this show. It's like, all right, all right. Um, so yeah, I need to try and get to the rest of that soon.
I'm not gonna lie, I was surprised when you told me that you were watching it because um I always took it as, it might be too violent or too, what I mean, like
Mm.
up there with how they spoke, what they did. Yeah, especially with the first episode, if I remember correctly, there's a lot of shit that happens, at least
It's
early on
yeah,
in the season, where it's like, whoa.
yeah. I mean, because I mean, for me, it's like I don't mind like violence in movies, and I mean, I guess I have various opinions when it comes to things like violence, swearing, nudity, and how much of it I am okay with, how much of it I'm not okay with, and stuff like that. But I'll say in general, if more specifically when it comes to violence, it's like I generally don't mind things being as violent as they can as it can be, because like I guess since from when I was a kid I was like watching RoboCop, and way before it should have been, and that at the time that was like the most bloodiest violent thing I'd ever seen, and I've been pretty much hooked on violent movies since then. Other stuff is like whatever to me, but I feel like sometimes it just stands out too much. Like sometimes nudity just stands out too much. Sometimes swearing can stand out too much. Violence, at least for me in movies, I don't think I've come across a movie where I felt the violence was too much. So I think that's the one thing that I'm just kind of psycho on when it comes to violence in films. It's just so far I've never seen a movie where I thought, nah, that's too. I've definitely seen films where I've been like, okay, but I don't think I've ever come across a film where I felt it's too much. It was like, yeah, no, I'm good with violence. But yeah, also been playing. Well, yeah, I mentioned this before as well. I've been playing Final Fantasy VII. The old school Final Fantasy VII. And I believe I'm pretty close to the end of that now. So I just got to the beginning of the third disc, or what would be the third disc, because it's not on a disc; it's also a download. But what would have been the third disc for those old school Final Fantasy fans, you know what I'm talking about. I just got
Yeah.
to the beginning of that. And apparently the third disc is the shortest part of the game. So I feel, and even just from the way the story's developing, it seems like it's getting ready to wrap up. So yeah, I'm almost at the end of that, which is a pretty big deal for me. Pretty big deal for me, just considering that all that happened years ago when I tried playing that. I got a corrupted save file, and it's like 25 years later. I'm finally getting around to Final Fantasy VII. So yeah, I feel like I'm pretty close to the end, I think. And hopefully no corrupt save files, not like that. But yeah, it's been a pretty cool journey so far, and it's time to start wrapping it up now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Um, I probably said it already, but yeah, I haven't played any of the Final Fantasy games yet, but I plan on playing it. Maybe not the originals, but I know they did a remake of Seven, and PlayStation gave that away for free not too long ago.
Oh right,
So
the yeah the on the thingy on the yeah. What was it? There's PlayStation Game Pass. It's not called Game Pass, I know, but I'm blanking on the name.
now the
PlayStation Plus,
not yeah,
Plus Premium
but not the
Plus
game
12.
catalog.
Yeah,
Yeah,
one
but
of
not
them.
the
Yeah.
game catalog. It's just when they gave away, they give away the free games each
Oh,
month.
okay. Oh, I see. I see.
So
See. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
yeah, they gave away the free. I mean, they gave away the remake of Final Fantasy for free. That was a while ago, so I had that downloaded for a while. I might play it. Well, I am gonna play it, but I don't know when, because I'm actually excited about Diablo 4. Even though I never played any of the Diablo games, I played Diablo
Okay.
4's open beta, and it's pretty damn dope.
Yeah,
I could see
Diablo has
myself
a.
losing myself for hours into that game. Uh, Somewhat similar to that World of Warcraft episode of South Park.
Oh right. Yeah. 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 Oh, it's the same developers as well, by the way. Blizzard. Um,
Yep.
but yeah, Diablo has a pretty passionate fan base. I've not played it myself either, but people who are into it are into it. From what I can tell. So yeah, this could. I mean, if you try it, I mean, it could. You could very well be like that episode of South Park where it's just on that game and do nothing else all day because it's just taking over your life. That could very well happen.
Yep, and I'm prepared for it. And it's whatever. I'm willing to take that chance.
All right then. So let's start talking about artificial intelligence now. So real quick, I want to say this actually before we get into the conversation. Somewhat of a disclaimer, I guess, kinda. Um, and I'm kind of speaking for myself, not for Sweet Bundy here. I'm not claiming to be any kind of expert on AI or artificial intelligence. Um, I'm just a regular person. I'm a regular dude. I've known about AI, of course, from a while ago because from playing video games and just being a fan of technology and stuff like that. And of course, in recent months, where things like ChatGPT have become pretty big news, and some of the things that people have done with that, and the AI art, and that whole thing, and self-driving cars that people have been talking about for years now. So I feel like I'm someone who's been paying attention to it, like a lot of people have, and just in recent times with a lot of AI news that's coming out, I'm somebody who is interested in some of the things I can do, but then also concerned about some of the things it can do. And I feel like I kind of fall between that, and that's what I want to talk about on that case. um Mrs. Sweet Bundy, I don't know. Would you consider yourself an expert on AI, or I mean, I assume you probably know more about it than I do.
I wouldn't say an expert, not by any degree, but uh, I have been using it, especially Chat GBT. I mean GPT.
Hmm.
Uh, I really like it. I like the AI. I could see the problem with it, and honestly, I've been searching for a way to do the AI that mimics someone's voice, just for my own entertainment, not for anything else, but to actually hear what it's capable of doing. It's like, man, I can only imagine like just 5 years from now, especially shit, less than 5 years from now,
Mm.
it's gonna progress because it's progressing really fast.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, it reminds me of this movie that came out a long time ago with Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson called Her,
Okay, I don't
where
think I've seen that, but okay.
well, basically, it's like you have an AI similar to Siri, and the AI is way more advanced, able to have an understanding of humans and actually hold a conversation. And it's supposed to be like replacing this guy, like who's played by Joaquin Phoenix, the protagonist. He's a loser. He doesn't have a relationship with anybody. He's by himself, really. And all of a sudden, he uses this AI who's like a companion, and he starts to develop feelings for it, and vice versa. And it's actually a good film. I don't like the ending, but it's a good film.
Yeah, I can imagine stuff like that happening in real life. If AI, because right now ChatGPT is pretty advanced. I mean, from when to be fair, I have not used ChatGPT 5, or is it 4 or 5, whatever the latest one is. Um, but I did use a older version of it, or I don't know what number it was, but it was not one of the older versions of it. And it's one of these things where you could have a reasonably decent conversation if you stick within kind of basic questions and stuff like that. Of course, once you start getting a bit more nuance, it's very clear. I mean, to be honest, it's kind of clear you're talking to a machine just anyway, but it becomes super clear you're talking to a machine once you try to get a bit more nuance with it. But yeah, but like you say, maybe in the next, you know, 3, 4, 5 years or whatever, you can be a lot more nuanced with more and more people using it, and more data being collected, and that sort of thing that can kind of maybe understand stuff a bit more on a different level like that. And at that point, you know yeah, the idea of somebody falling in love with a computer is not that far-fetched, especially when you consider how lonely a lot of people are in the world today. There's 8 billion people in the planet, but so many people are still lonely because it's getting more and more difficult to connect on a human level. So yeah, that's something that potentially we can see. um and if they ever, I don't know if they ever start to show Humans, where they have the robots that look and like humans. um if you ever get something like that where you can have a robot that looks and feels like a human, I mean, that's probably way, way off, I'm sure. But if you can imagine, make a robot that looks and feels like a human, and program it with some advanced AI, boy, that's opening up all kinds of questions. So
Yeah.
but
I
yeah,
mean,
okay. Oh,
the
sorry.
AI from what I've tried out, like there are times where it can respond pretty, like an average person, where you don't realize that as a robot if you didn't have it in your face right then and there. South Park did an episode not too long ago, which is how I found out about Chat GPT. Is they pretty much were having the boys use it to respond to their girlfriends over text messages.
Okay.
And then they used it for homework, to write essays and all that, et cetera, et cetera. And the way how they resolved it was by using it to come up with a scenario in which they resolved whatever the issue was, right? Come to find out, when you see the credits, part of the episode was written by that program, the AI.
Okay.
Now, was it a good episode? Kinda. I mean, it was an average South Park episode, but it's the fact that this AI that, is not all that advanced just yet, because it hasn't been around for so long. I mean, for too long, is still managing to do some incredible things already, and it's only getting better. In
Huh.
fact, they added restrictions on it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now you have to
The
word it
publicly
in a
available
way.
one.
Exactly. So now you have to word it in a way in order to get it to respond sometimes.
All right. So with AI, artificial intelligence, what do you feel is either now or in or one of the say potentials? What do you feel is the most beneficial thing it can do, and also what do you feel is the most detrimental thing it can do?
I feel like it can actually help develop your thought process. Sometimes you have an idea in your mind, but you don't know how to write it on paper, pretty much. It could be anything. It doesn't have to necessarily be for writing or whatever. It's more of like trying to develop your thoughts in a understandable way. And the AI can actually do that as long as you phrase it correctly. So you could say your arguments, you could tell it what to do, what to say, whatever, and then you could tweak it. Um, as far as like what I see it being an issue is where I could see. So right now they're doing a writer's strike, and
Yeah.
one of the arguments is, oh, the AI can't convey emotions and et cetera, like a human can.
Right.
Well, if the script is written and somebody proofreads the script and they're like, all right, so add this, change that, and done. It's not going to take you as long as it would coming up with the thing from scratch and writing it, and
Mm-hmm.
writing all of it. So, you know, as much as it sucks that writers aren't getting paid enough or being treated with enough respect that they deserve, they can't get too ahead of themselves, because now is not the time to take that risk and lose your job,
Mm.
because AI is that powerful. It's not one of those things where we could just go ahead and look at it and be like, "Oh, it's not human like. It's not human like." Yeah, okay, keep playing, because you have no idea that the more people that use it, and
Yeah.
now especially that it's like wildfire, where we always talk about it, we're always trying it out for fun, is learning, learning, learning the
Yeah.
whole time. So
Yeah.
eventually it's going to get to that point. It's already kind of getting to that point, because I've, like, for example, um a couple of friends of mine were joking around, and we were using it, and we were like talking about things, and we would stop and then have the AI type out what we wanted to say, but have the AI say it. And like, it kind of basically, it reminded me of, you ever seen one of them sketch comedies? I can't really remember which one. I don't know if it's the Chappelle show or what, but pretty
Okay.
much like, how can I put it? So, they'll have the black people talking in slang or whatever, and then have a translator to translate it in like white terms or whatever,
Okay.
if
Right.
that
Right.
makes any
Right. Yeah.
sense. It was
I know.
almost
Yeah. I know
like
what you
we were
mean.
playing with it like that.
Airplane
And it
ticket.
actually kind of worked. Like, some of the stuff the AI would say actually helped, like, all right, so I don't like playing one of the games that my friend wants to play, which is Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, right? It's not important what game it is. I'm just saying for context. I don't want to play the fucking game. So me, if you ask me, do you want to play the game? No, I don't want to play the fucking game. It's boring to me. It takes too long to make turns. I don't like it. But the AI will go ahead and develop a paragraph of what to say to reject the offer and then propose something else. And it doesn't come off too fake. It's just more like, how can I say, professional or whatever. But if I were to tell the AI um to learn my personality or whatever, and it can eventually, because you could go ahead and write simulations. How would this song come out if it was written by this rapper or whatever, for example? The AI could potentially, if not now, maybe, sometime in the future, learn your personality, learn your traits, and then write something based on your personality, something you would say.
Hmm. But do you feel then that there is a potential future where we just have far fewer writers or far fewer, say, creatives, and no, it's mostly just AI generating poems and songs and books and stories and articles, and then some guy or say a small team of people is proofreading it? Like, do you feel like that is a potential future?
Absolutely. Because music already, well, not a lot of music, but, well, shit, no, sorry, a lot of music, not all music, but a lot of music, it's already borrowing from so much. And now you got it to where you can mimic voices. You just need a sample of a voice, and then you could have the lyrics written by that person. Pretty much what I was saying. Like, they already had an AI um not too long ago, where, and it's on YouTube, you can find it, where they this guy said he had the AI rap. There's a couple of things, actually, now that I think about it. So on YouTube, if you search, there's this guy who had the real Slim Shady or My Name Is, one of the two, written as if it was written today. Like, how would it sound if it was written today?
Uh huh.
And the AI even mimic Eminem's voice, Eminem's style, Eminem's voice, all that. They had it. They had an album not too long ago where it got taken down now, but you can still find it on YouTube. I'm guessing, where they had the 27 Club, where musicians, they died at the age of 27, et
All
cetera,
right.
et
Yeah. Yeah.
cetera.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they had some of those artists. Okay, here's a song that they could have made today if they were still alive. They did that with Nirvana. Is a little different, but what they did was have the AI write the lyrics. Now, as far as the beat, the instrumental, I'm not entirely sure. I don't remember, but I know for sure the lyrics were written by AI, and then they had somebody that sounded as much as possible to the singer. And I think they adjusted it a little bit with AI technology. I'm not entirely sure about that part, so I might be wrong. But nonetheless, that song did sound like something Nirvana would make. And mind you, it was a great fucking song. And I'm not even a Nirvana fan, really. I like their hits. I'm not like one of
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
people where I'll listen to their album and be like, yeah, I like this. Not to say
Oh,
that I don't
whatever.
like them,
Never mind.
but
Never
not to say that I don't
mind.
like them, but rather, like, I don't go to dig for their music.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But that AI song, I fucking love it. It's one of my favorite songs of all time now. And
So
that's
if oh,
crazy.
sorry. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So I was gonna say that. So if we get to a point where AI is, producing a lot of these songs and maybe just a few tweaks, I mean, eventually, I guess it's conceivable then that after that, AI starts to learn from itself. Because right now, it's like the wealth of history of music, for example, that you can say pull from. Um, But then once you've done that, what's next? Like you can't keep pulling from the same well, otherwise you just keep coming up with the same things. So eventually they have to start pulling from itself and inspiring itself. I mean, I don't know inspiring what the right words to use because it's a machine, but eventually starts pulling from itself and using its own styles. I mean, I think you if that's the case, especially with AI being able to create voices. I mean, would we then potentially see a future where you just don't have singers at all, and you just don't have writers like human writers at all, where it's just AI pulling from its own wells because that's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then using its own mechanics or whatever to I told you I'm not an expert to create its own voices and his voices are sounding more and more human with, you know, ad libs and intonations and, you know, and everything else, you know, that goes into a voice. I mean, do you think that eventually, maybe further down the line, we have a future where there's just no human, or let's say, well, I mean, I'm sure there's always going to be human creators, but in terms of, say, the mainstream, there's just none or extremely few, you know, human artists, and vast, like 99% of it is AI generated content. You think that's a possible future?
Yeah, it's already kind of happening. There's somebody that's been making um fake songs with Drake and some other
Oh, right. Yeah,
other
yeah, yeah.
artists
Yeah.
like Weekend, and it's to the point where the record label is trying to do takedowns on that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've heard
So
that actually, yeah.
yeah,
And actually,
it's
to your
already
point about the writer strike, I did see that part of it as well is not allowing AI to pull from their own work, so it can't learn from things that they've written. Which I guess is a law that has to be looked at as well, to how much AI can learn from, and specifically what and where permissions are needed. And but yeah, that's all for the legal people to figure out.
I mean, it's not going to be possible, really. They could try to limit it, but you can't make it impossible to for the AI not to do it because you could literally just teach the AI yourself what this song is. Give the lyrics to the AI, and they're not going to have it to where you can't. They're going to allow you to pay premium for certain features, and they can't allow you to uh, pay for premium if you can't really use all the features that's available. Of course, you can't abuse it, sure, do anything illegal, but to say, "Oh, I can't have an AI know about this song," no, I don't think that's possible. Even if that was the case, uh, people can create their own AIs. You can have AI write codes. That's why a lot of people are able
Yeah,
to make their
yeah,
own
yeah,
versions too.
yeah. I saw that,
So
like writing codes
it,
for programs and copy and pasting, and it works apparently.
yeah. So I mean, music companies, they've always been extra paranoid when it came to losing money. And it's like this is one battle where you're just gonna waste money trying to fight it. You could go ahead and do some things where I get it. You don't want to give off. You don't want people making money off of fake Drake, fake Weekend, but that's about as far as you can take it, honestly.
Do you think that's a good thing then? That's, I mean, assuming it happens, do you think? I mean, to your mind, does that sound like a good thing for people, for humanity, for society, to have our arts and creativity 99 or maybe even 100% generated by AI? Is that a good thing for you, or do you think that's a bad thing?
Uh, I mean, it's bad for the artists, but they could use it too. Honestly, artists won't even have to really do much. They could just tweak it. They could sit down and say, "All right, write a song about this in my style," and then they could tweak it a little bit, add in things that they would actually say, and make things way faster. Make productions way faster for them to produce music, to write music. Um, yeah, I really feel like it's just going to make things faster, more advanced, and a little dangerous for some people, a little paranoid for some people. But honestly, um, the only time we should really be worried is if they start making androids, like actual androids that we've seen in movies and video games, not just
Terminator.
the little mechanical kind of robots that we see trying to express facial expressions and all that. I'm talking about actual moving fucking androids. Then we could worry.
Well, that could be happening because I did see one article. I didn't read it, but I saw a headline about them putting AI in some robot dog or something. So that could be happening too. I'm just saying,
I mean,
maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but
they do have a couple of androids slash robots that already have like a personality is learning humans. But if it gets to the point where it's actually moving on its own and all that, it's not going to be the end of the world, but it's more like definitely people are going to be dishing out so much money to just, you know, having that. It doesn't even have to be for the obvious where you could be like, oh, you could have a girlfriend, boyfriend now, even if you're a loser, blah 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 blah. Besides that, it's gonna be it's gonna be androids going out doing stuff for you. Like imagine instead of ordering on Uber Eats, you have your android go to the restaurant, order the food for you, and
Okay, it's
then
like a robot
bring it
servant,
home.
AI robot servant.
Pretty much. You can have your AI drive you to work and then drive your car back home and park it. So you could get your parking spot back. Stuff like that. And if an AI is driving you, it's going to be better than you in most cases. Not 100% because you see with Tesla, but it is possible. So, yeah, we're in the very early stages and we're just seeing fast development. So, of course, people are nervous, people are scared, but there's always been a paranoia when it comes to technology. It's been deep rooted, but I'm all for it. I don't care. It could be more helpful than not helpful, honestly.
Okay. Well, here's what I think. And I might get a little bit more doom and gloom than you, but we'll see. Um, so my belief is that you can never make any kind of AI or robot or whatever that can truly fully replace what a human can do. I think we're far too nuanced, and just like AI is evolving, humans evolve as well. We're constantly changing too. I don't think you could ever create something that can truly, fully replace a human at what we do. Now, that being said, I don't think that could be the thing that decides how successful or how well adopted AI becomes. What I think it could come down to is how much nuance are we willing to sacrifice in order for convenience, in order to gain convenience? Because I think AI, for the most part, is going to be able to do things, like you said, more efficiently, quicker, and stuff like that. It's not going to be able to do it in ways that a human might and have the care and attention and a human might apply. But then, in the term, in the terms of do I value that versus do I value the convenience? I think that's where it's going to be the deciding factor for a lot of people. And let's be honest, a lot of us do value convenience. We do, and I can't claim to be someone who does. I value convenience too. There are cases, there are things where I will 100% value a human connection over the convenience. But yeah, I've got to be honest. There's a lot of times I value convenience more than the human connection. It's gonna be different for different people. But I think that's ultimately going to be the deciding thing for a lot of us. Where do you prefer the convenience? Where do you prefer the human nuances? Um, but in terms of like what AI can do, from my understanding and some of the benefits that it can bring, yeah, it's going to be down to things like certain things are going to be more convenient, certain things are going to become more accessible to a lot of people, easier to find information, easier to maybe even learn things in some cases. It can be easier to, the barrier to entry to a lot of things could be reduced significantly for a lot of people. And I think that's where a lot of the benefits are going to lie in terms of making things more available to more people so that more people can have access to more tools and be able to do more things with it. Where I feel the potential detriments are, and especially as it does seem to be getting more and more advanced, and as you're saying earlier about potential futures where most of our music or most of our creativity, most of the art that we consume could potentially be generated by AI. Assuming people start to value that more than they value human connections, or maybe they just can't tell the difference. But if that is a potential future, then you effectively have a lot of people with not much to do. Because AI could, because that's saying I don't think AI can replace a human, but what it can do is replace a task. So if you think of any job that you've ever had is a series of tasks that you're asked to do. Now, as a person, you bring a certain nuance to that. You bring a certain flair to that. Whether it's the conversations you have with your coworkers, whether it's the connections you have with your boss, and there's something that you do that makes, well, hopefully, makes that a better environment to work in. AI cannot do that, but it can replace that task that you do, and it could probably do it quicker than you, and it could probably do it, faster than you, and so on. Maybe not as good as you, but it could probably do it, near enough to, and depending on what the task specifically is, maybe it can do it better than you. Um, so if your boss is like, well, look, I don't care about the work environment. I just replace everybody with these robots and get things done quicker. You know, that's people out of a job. Gary
Mhm.
Vaynerchuk was talking about journalists using AI and things like ChatGPT to, um, you know, write articles where you could give it prompts and it would just write the article, and maybe they just have to, uh, tweak it like you were saying about with the songs. Now, if that's a potential future, it's probably not too far off where, some owner of a news site just says, I can do prompts myself. Why do I need to pay journalists to write prompts? You know, like, I mean, I don't know how, let's say a news site employs 100 journalists. I don't know, maybe probably doesn't, but as an example, let's say a news site employs 100 journalists. If they're just writing prompts, do you really need 100 journalists? Or do you just take five? You know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah.
what happens when a lot of this gets replaced? Now, one of the things that I was reading somewhere, and unfortunately I don't have the news article anymore, but I did read somewhere, or at least heard somewhere, that AI could also open up new jobs for people, which is probably true as well. I assume that's going to be true because you need people to manage these things as well. Um, but then the other issue that I see is, who are these jobs for? Because the people whose jobs are going aren't necessarily going to be the same people who are taking these new jobs. And especially when you consider that a lot of the jobs that might go might be occupied by older people, like say 40s and upwards. And if they have to retrain to, get these new jobs, who's taking those guys on versus the young guy who's just fresh out of college? You know what I mean? So you could open up new jobs, but who are those jobs for? Who are those jobs going to be taken up by? And what happens to the rest of the people? And then, eventually down the line, if you are having these jobs where the only jobs available are people who can manage AI systems, and eventually get so good enough that they could potentially just start drawing from themselves. It's like, okay, what are we moving towards, and what happens to, and especially considering how the world's population itself has just gotten so much more bigger over the years. 200 years ago, the world reached about 1 billion people, right? 200 years
Mhm.
later, it's nearly 8 billion people. So that's like a massive growth in a relatively short amount of time. But all those people, at least most of those people, need to work, need to feed their families, need to feed themselves, need to take care of things. But if all these jobs are being replaced by jobs that only a few people can do, what happens to everybody else? What happens to the economy? What happens to, you know what I mean? So I feel like there's a lot of questions of, what do we actually do if everything's being replaced? If all these songs, if all these articles are being written by AI to the point where they're good enough so that you either can't tell the difference between a human writer and an AI writer, or at the very least, you don't care for the difference. You know what I mean? Where does everybody go?
Yeah.
So I feel like there's benefits to it, but I feel like the benefits stop where we have to start limiting it, because if this is going to be as advanced as people say it is, as potential says it is, then yeah, that means that, I mean, we've already in a place where, for example, you call up some company because you're having trouble with your, I don't know, oil or whatever, and the first thing you hear is like an automated voice, right? And say, press one for this, say what you need. It's probably not going to be too difficult to create an AI that could hear what you're saying and respond to you in a way as if it's a human, or at least close enough to what you're going to need to query, right?
Mhm.
So maybe telephone jobs are the next to go. People who do call center work, So there's so many potential areas that can be replaced by this thing if it indeed is advanced, or gets as advanced as where it seems to be going. So it's cool on the sense that, okay, I can use this to help me now, but at what point does it stop helping you and starts replacing you? And that's where I feel like we are going to run into a lot of problems because where do you go? And another thing that I don't think I've heard too many people or anybody really talk about is, you know, with men specifically, a lot of how we are brought up, and I know you know, whether it should happen or shouldn't happen, that's kind of by the by. But a lot of how we are raised is down to how useful we are. You know, how useful we are to our families, how useful we are to society, how useful we are to, you know, people around us. A lot of our value is derived from what we can do, right? And yeah, I get it. That's not necessarily a good way to raise people. I'm not saying that, and perhaps that should have been gone a long time ago. But bottom line is how it is what it is. So if we're still in this way of raising people that way, what happens when we can't do anything? Where does our value come from if we haven't learned to value ourselves in other ways? So we could have a potential, you know, mental health crisis if this gets that advanced where a person's job is being replaced by a machine. Where's their value if they can't contribute, if they can't do anything, you know? And of course, I know, you know, that our value isn't just about what we can do, but that's not how a lot of us feel, you know what I mean? So yeah, I just think that there are some really cool things that AI can do. Um, but yeah, if it's getting as advanced as it seems to be, and people seem to be talking about it, how advanced it could potentially get, if that is going to be the future, um, I'm not sure it's a good future. You know, that's I'm not sure that's a good future. I mean, I think it's going to be cool in some respects, and definitely good for some people, right? But overall, I'm not sure it's a good future. I think it could be a very, very dire future for a lot of people, if that's the case.
Yeah, but you know, it all depends on like where you're at career wise. Like, are you into arts and everything?
Mm,
Like when they had, let's say, a few months back, the AI blew up with the art AI,
right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and I loved it. And so many people were using it, and then there were
Mm-hmm.
a lot of artists that were mad. They were,
Yeah.
at least from what I saw on Twitter,
Oh no,
they're
they're what?
stealing
They're,
from
yeah.
other artists, blah blah
Yeah.
blah. Oh, you would go ahead and pay money for AI art, but you wouldn't pay for real art. And it's like, I'm sorry, but I was on the side of AI art in that case. I mean, sure, the whole stealing art, if that's true, that sucks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not with that. But as far as telling me that I should pay you versus an AI that does it faster, does it almost instantaneously as opposed to you, no. Especially when if their prices beat you and is faster, more convenient,
Mm. Yep.
then yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and pay the fucking AI. Now, with that in mind, a lot of people are like that. A lot of people think like that.
Yeah. No, for
So,
sure.
I'm not
Nuance versus convenience. Yeah.
exactly. It's somewhat similar to how, like, for example, Netflix, right? Netflix is giving you all this drama to watch their shows, to have their service. You got to pay more. You can't share your password. You have to do
Mm.
all these things. But if I could just go on one of my fucking websites, which is easy to find, right? And now we have it to where we can make it even more convenient. We could have the ads blocked. So you don't have to worry about pop-ups and all that. And it's for free. I'm gonna do it. You taking away, you made things less convenient for me to enjoy legally. So now I'm gonna go ahead and go on whatever free website to watch your show. Now I want to watch. And fuck you. Now you lost money. Now you lost money completely. Instead of just taking the money that you can get and making it a little more fair and a little more convenient for someone like myself, now you lost all my money. So
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah. I
at
think
the
a lot
end
of
of the
people would
day,
feel that way or similar. Yeah.
yeah. And I feel like at the end of the day, it just comes down to, now you have to stand out even more. Now you have to really put your feet in it. You can't just go ahead and work and expect it to just pass. You have to go and be your best because, again, yes, AI could replicate a lot, and it could probably do it to perfection at one point. quote unquote perfection. But if you can go ahead and deliver way more than the AI can, then they will always come to you first. And I'm saying that from like for like artists, for anybody who's into anything creative, whether you're writing, singing, acting, whatever, your performance can always outdo them if you be the best that you can be.
Yeah.
There's never going to be an AI that can replicate the same energy that you would have saw with Michael Jackson in his prime, for example. The Michael Jackson that could get on stage and people are fucking going crazy, fainting before he even spoke. That you can't replicate that really. You can't replace that because at the end of the day, we're always going to see, and I feel like at least for our generation, the next generation, like the youngest ones, the ones that are being born now, sure, it's going to be different for them because they're going to grow up with that, where there's going to be a blend of, AI and human. With us, we're always going to know what human really is because honestly, a lot of people don't want to see it this way, but our time is, passing on, so
Yeah.
to speak.
We're, we're,
we
we're, the,
are,
we're the old god now.
yeah. Like, you know how we went from beepers to cell phones? This is pretty much that happening again.
Mm.
And I really feel sorry for like the past two generations, mine's included, where we went through so many fucking changes already. Like, I still remember, and I'm not even that old. I still remember having a Walkman. I still remember having a CD player. I remember having a CD
Yeah.
player, the
Yeah.
CD player too big to fucking fit in one of my pockets. If I drop it, the disc falls out. The damn CD player is running around, and now my CD
Skipping.
scratch, so it always skips. I have to skip the
Yeah.
track in order to
The
continue
anti-skipped
listening.
technology. Battery, bring the
Yeah,
battery out. Yeah. Yeah.
man. But now, shit, they have it to where we had the iPod Touch. Now that's irrelevant. I just
Mm.
found out recently that my phone, I have to replace my phone pretty soon because now they're phasing out that. It's like we
Yeah.
go
Phasing
through
out your
so many
phones.
changes. Like, yeah, with the iPhone.
Oh,
Uh
Apple. Yeah. Never mind.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're phasing it out. And this is just something we're gonna have to get used to. The changes and we have to adapt and we can't just sit there bitch and moan because this is something me personally, even if it ends up being an inconvenience to me down the road, I don't want to try to stand in the way of the progression of it because it could be very beneficial if you use it correctly. You
Sure.
don't have to
Sure.
be left behind. Just keep up with it now, pay attention, and just embrace it because it's not going to go away. No matter how much you bitch, no matter how much you do a petition, whatever, and no matter what you say or do, you're not going to stop it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that the sort of message I would give to people as well, like because whatever's going to happen is going to happen. Either AI is going to take off or it's not. But either way, you have to try and put yourself in a position to benefit from however the world is as much as possible. Because then that's all you can do. And it sucks. Things aren't always going to go the way that you want them to go. But ultimately, however the world is, whether it's AI or not, you're gonna have to figure out how to navigate it as best as possible. That's the same as it is now. It's the same as it's going to be in the future. Figure out how to navigate it as best as possible. But to what you said about AI art though, and not paying, or rather paying an AI because it'd be cheaper to do the art and quicker and stuff like that. Yeah, because it's kind of like what I said about the nuance versus convenience. For myself, I do see the value in a human drawn artwork. A person could bring a feeling, a also word a vibe or just an experience to their work that a robot or an AI just cannot do. And an AI can draw from history of the arts, and it could definitely generate a really cool looking image. And I've seen some of the stuff that people have been doing with their AI generated images, and yeah, they definitely look, in terms of visually, they look really cool. You have some things where you can have some draw you in places like put your picture into a machine and be like, oh yeah, draw me in a Armani suit in space holding a banana or something. You know what I mean? And it can just do it, pretty quickly. So yeah, in terms of what it can generate, it definitely can generate a really cool looking image. For me though, art is more than just a cool looking image. There's a story being told. There's so much in there that you get from a person doing it. So for myself, I would happily pay more for a human painting than an AI generated painting. But I recognize saying that I'm probably in the minority, with that kind of thinking when it comes to art. And I know, for example, like when I was doing photography, I did kind of photography on a very kind of basic amateur level. But I was doing it for a little while as a kind of a serious hobby. And one of the things I've noticed is that how very much people devalue photography. Except when it comes to weddings. Weddings you can make a lot of money from, by the way. Anybody wants to be a photographer, weddings is where you're gonna make your money. But anyway, that's another thing. That's another thing. Um, but yeah, people generally speaking devalue photographers. Like they would, like if somebody says to you, "Oh, can we take pictures at my event?" and you say to them, "Okay, cool. This is what I'm going to need in terms of a fee." Um, the amount of times you might hear, "You know what? I won't bother. I won't bother," and they'll just like take pictures with people's cell phones or whatever and the selfies and stuff, and they'll just put that together and be like, "All right, that's done." And it won't be the same as what a photographer can do. It won't have the same kind of capturing the essence of the event as a photographer do, and you won't get necessarily like really cool all that kind of stuff and lighting and stuff. But for them, like it's good enough. It's good enough, right? So it's not that people think it's just as good as they know it's not as good, but it's good enough, and they'll be fine with that. So yeah, I recognize when I talk about art, I'm probably in the minority when it comes to looking at art in that way. And perhaps as part of that is because I do consider myself to be creative, and I know that I wouldn't want to, at least not full time, use an AI to generate ideas for me. Like I think there's, like for example, there's another thing actually. When you do writing, any kind of creative writing, they sometimes, well, very often, would give you a prompt, and you kind of write from there. So I recognize a value in having starting points because it opens up your mind to thinking about things differently. But if all you're doing is taking something generated by a machine and tweaking it here and there, it's less you and more them. And I feel like it just takes you so much out of the process of being creative. And for myself, creativity isn't a chore. It's what I do. I don't want to replace that. That's what I do. So I get from a business point of view that they don't care about that. And from a consumer point of view, you don't care about that. You just, does it sound good to my ears? Does it sound cool? Can I you know what I mean? That's all you care about. Does it sound good? Right. So I
Hmm.
get it. I'm somewhat in the minority when I talk about it that way. Um, so that to me is a shame if that goes away, because I understand from an artistic point of view that you don't want to have something take away the thing that you have passion for and replace it with something that you just kind of sit in front of, and you're just proofreading, really. He's proofreading somebody else. It's like in school, you copy your friend's homework and just change a few words. That's what that is. That's what that is. It's not you writing it. You're just you know taking a box and underlining something in red or whatever, and yeah, you lose the actual creativity of it. So that to me would be a shame if that goes. I mean, actually, let me say this: I don't think it would ever go. I don't, because I think people who are creative will always find ways to be creative. The shame of it is that you may not necessarily be able to get your creativity out to very many people. I think certainly on a mainstream level, it might be that vast majority of people just don't care. And that to me would be the shame.
I mean, again, people don't have to worry too much. I just see in the future, um, if you have, like, for example, I used to really be into writing,
Mm,
and occasionally I'll run into writer's block. But
mm,
now, if I had AI back then, like we do now, I wouldn't have stopped. I would just go ahead and start fucking with the AI, ask the AI questions or see what the AI would say, and then either be inspired by it and come up with something else or tweak whatever is sent. And I feel like a lot of people are going to be using that, even the people who are against it, even the people who are rallying against it and talking shit about it. They're probably going to use it because it's so
Mm.
convenient, it's so smart, and the more there are people that use it, the more it's going to improve.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's kind of like those self-service checkouts. Actually, like when they came around, I did not like them. In fact, technically, maybe technically, I still don't like them. Not really, but yeah, they are convenient. Like I can't deny the convenience of going to a self-service checkout, especially when you're only getting like one or two items. You know, the convenience of
Yep.
just going boop boop boop, scan your card, tap your card or whatever, and you're out. You know, and I remember the other day, like maybe a few weeks back, I went to one of the human cashiers, and it wasn't even a long queue. But then I was kind of standing there, like I'm still standing here, like like you kind of realize it is a lot longer. Um, but of course, with a human, you can say hello. You have a little chat, a little banter, and that's a cool thing, right? That is a cool thing. But in terms of just being convenient in and out in and out of the shop, yeah, the self-service checkouts are far better for that, or far more convenient for that. So yeah, I think that convenience factor is going to be big.
Yeah. And I mean, for self checkout, I like it because, well, sometimes I could get free stuff. Honestly,
Yeah,
when they're
yeah. If you
increasing
yeah.
prices and it's not really fair to be charging
Hey,
this much
those
for simple things, it's like, well, you know,
mate,
okay,
listen, yeah. I'm not saying anybody should do this. I'm just saying self-service checkouts are too easy to steal from. They're
yep,
too easy. Even now in big 2023, they've been around for I don't know, 7, 8 years, however long they've been around for. Even
quite
now,
a while.
too easy to steal from. Now, I'm not saying I don't encourage it. Stealing is not good. I'm just saying too easy. Too easy.
Well, I encourage it unless you're going to try to sue me or something, because a lot of these prices are outrageous.
Hmm.
Sometimes like me, I suffer with insomnia sometimes. It's hard for me to get to sleep on time. Or if I come home from a closing shift, you have to wire yourself down. Yeah, you're exhausted, but you're not tired or sleepy, I should say. Um, so you could be laying down in bed and you're relaxing, but you can't go to sleep because your mind is still pumping. And those are the times where I'm going to need some sleeping pills. Um, but if you're charging like, let's say, uh, damn near $25 to $50 or whatever for sleeping pills that are not even going to last me more than 2 weeks, no, you're just ripping me off. So guess what? I'm going to go to the checkout. I'm going to put that shit in my bag and call it a day. That's it. I'll pay for my other stuff like simple shit, like if I got a couple of waters, drinks, whatever, snacks. I'm gonna pay for that because that's fair price most of the time. But for outrageous prices, you can kiss my ass. I'm taking that home. Fuck you. Fuck the system,
Yes, this
etc.
this is why
Whatever,
Sweet Bundy
whatever.
doesn't show his face, by the way, because like you don't need people recognizing him. This is this
You
is this is
damn right.
exactly why Sweet Bundy is a criminal, dude. Dun, 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 dun. Um, but yeah, no, I get it. Like, yeah, that's a whole thing about prices going up and inflation and all that, and economic crisis and cost of living, and it sucks. I will say this though, I don't know if you tried this already, but chamomile tea is good for if you're having trouble sleeping. It's probably cheaper than
Okay.
sleeping pills as well. Probably, I don't know. I've not compared prices.
I mean, it
All
better
right,
be.
but yeah, let's talk a little bit about AI in games now because I ain't know if you know, but Ubisoft announced a little while back that they're going to start using AI in some of their games to generate scripts for non-playable characters. And the idea that they put out there that I've been reading at least is that they're going to generate the scripts, but someone is still going to check them. So it's not completely AI just yet. But rather than having somebody write out, a bunch of stuff and figure out what they're going to say, blah blah blah, they're just going to have it generated. by AI, and that way, I guess the hope is they can have a lot more variation in what the AI is saying with the, but it's just for the non-playable characters, and I guess the humans could figure out stuff for the playable characters. Do you see that as a good thing or a bad thing, or it's Ubisoft, they just make crap games anyway? Like, how do you see that?
I see it as a good thing. Anything that's gonna, the thing is, people are starting to forget that a lot of things are bad. Not all, like not most of it, but a lot. There's a lot of bad written stuff, movies, shows, TV, games, etc., etc. And those were written by humans. So you
Mm,
can't sit there and expect AI not to make some mistakes or whatever. Shit, AI be coming up with some cool stuff. I just saw recently this guy on YouTube. He had the chat GPT write pretty much a fictional fantasy booking of what if the WWE and WCW back in the day when they were both like, neck and neck in competition. If they did one pay-per-view together, how would it go? So the AI made some great fucking matches and outcomes. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but guess what? Shit now written by humans is not perfect. So the AI is going based off of what it knows from humans. So you can't even judge and say, "Oh, well, the AI sucks." It's learning from us. So yeah,
mm.
But honestly, I'm all for AI. It's gonna suck sometimes, but I'm with it because it's more beneficial than not.
I think in this case, the idea that Ubisoft put out, it it seems to me like a good use of AI in terms of. I mean, I'm not a game developer, so I don't want to speak too much for game developers. But when it comes to video games and non-playable characters, for the most part, you don't really interact with. You're not really paying attention to everything they're saying, and it's only really more important stuff where you might have to interact with one of the NPCs that you're gonna have to pay attention. And I assume that stuff is still being written by a person to make sure it's in line with the story and this, that, and the other, and everything else. So when it comes to the characters that you don't really interact with, you just kind of passing them by in the street and they're just saying things to each other, that being generated by an AI doesn't seem to my ears like a bad idea. And in all honesty, I kind of fall on the side of this Ubisoft. Who cares? Like they don't for them. They got a few hits, but they got a few like really good games, but for the most part, they're just pretty whatever. So yeah, I feel like that sounds like a pretty decent use of AI. It's more so if it starts to go further than that, where I'm like, okay, well, what's this thing down here? But yeah, I can't imagine that making a massive difference to Ubisoft games. I mean, maybe games like I don't know, maybe Grand Theft Auto to some degree. It could, I think stuff like that can make a noticeable difference. Or just games that, or for example, like a game like The Witcher, where there's just like a lot more care typically given to the game itself. I feel like when you start implementing AI tools in those, like advanced AI tools in those, I can feel that you might notice the difference a bit more. But Ubisoft or EA, them companies is like nobody's gonna notice. Nobody, they've churned out the most laziest crap most of the time anyway. So it's like whatever, like whatever.
Pretty much.
This podcast is sponsored by you. I'm playing. Bro, imagine. um, but I guess for yourself, then it sounds like, well, it sounds like you said it, like you are pretty much on board with AI and its potential future and what it can do. Um, and I'll say yeah, I mean maybe not on board completely, but certainly I do feel like there are going to be some really cool benefits with it. But yeah, my thing is technology is at its best when it helps people. Um, when it starts to try to replace people, that's why I feel like, okay, we need to kind of dial it back a little bit, because ultimately every piece of technology over their history of humanity has had that potential to replace people in some degree, right? Um, so it's somewhat of an inevitability that jobs are going to come and go and new jobs are going to be created, and I guess we're in that kind of middle area where you know from when we were kids, all the jobs that existed were jobs that existed from ages ago, and since then some new jobs have opened up with how the world's kind of developed, and now we're potentially entering into an era where a lot of those jobs could go and get replaced by new jobs, and that's, like I said, it's going to be a scary time for a lot of people, because it's not going to benefit everybody, right? There are going to be people who lose out tremendously, and considering the size of the population, that's not just a small amount of people potentially. Um,
Hmm.
so although there could be some really cool benefits to AI in the future, I think, and we may eventually get to a point where you look at AI as just that thing that everybody does, whatever, right? They may get to a point that we think of AI as in the future, where we think of AI as the way we think of television. It's like, it's just, you have television, whatever, right? You know what I mean? That could come, but before we get there, there's that teething period, if you will, where a lot of people are going to be displaced. A lot of people are going to not know what to do with themselves. There's going to be people who benefit tremendously, whether financially or status or whatever else, right? But there's going to be a lot of people, a lot more people who don't. And I do think there has to be some kind of care and consideration for people who do lose out, because you could end up with potentially a massive unemployment issue, um, where you have a whole bunch of jobs available, but not enough people trained to do them, or not enough people willing to do them. Um, you know what I mean? There's that period where it's not going to be so great, if that is to be the future. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
how do you feel about that? Or you like, I don't even care.
No, I
Let
mean,
them jobs burn. Let them starve.
I mean, the thing is, I feel like when this AI thing really picks off, I mean, lifts off, is it's gonna bring the real artists. It's gonna make them work even harder. A lot of people been skating past and getting shit through that is mediocre. For example, one of my news sources is a terrible site called New York Post, and they suck. Sometimes they got some articles, and some writers are just straight to the point. They deliver the news without making puns, jokes, and biased statements. You know, which is great. But the ones that they want to go ahead and already set in stone, or plant a seed in your mind of what you should be feeling, right? Those are bad writers. When you're telling the news, it has to be an unbiased opinion. It has to be straight, just straight the news. Um, I don't like being kind of like told how to feel. Make me let me
Yeah.
decide.
Yeah. No, I get that. Yeah.
So that's just with journalism, for example. But when it comes to movies, films, art, whatever it could be, uh, everybody's gonna have to step up. Not everybody's just gonna fold under the AI and be like, "Oh man, I can't compete." Those who can't keep up, they will be lost. And you had a good run. It's unfortunate, and this could be said for me too. If I'm in that boat, well, then I just wasn't good enough. However, guess what? I could go ahead and buy some AI and make myself better. So, shit, fuck it. I'm all for this AI stuff. Of course, I'm not going to love it 100%. There's going to be things that I have a problem with, of course, and I already do. I like, for example, I'm not a popular streamer or anything, but if I was, one of my biggest concerns would be I'm a streamer that doesn't show their face. I go strictly by voice. So an AI can actually replicate my voice, the inflections and all that. It can even probably mimic my personality pretty close too. So Joe Rogan has been dealing with this recently, where people are doing for for jokes. They'll make an AI mimic his voice as some random guest voice, and they start talking about random shit. And he was worried about it. He's like, "Oh man, how am I going to let people know?" Because some people are jackasses, and then
Yeah,
other people you can't really blame them because you believe what you hear or whatever. And if it
yeah,
sounds believable, that's that. Some people are in denial at how accurate the AI can actually be already, and they don't seem to realize we're in 2023. That's a long, like, for us 90s and 80s and well, I don't want to say 70s, but 90s and 80s kids, some of us are like, hold up. Like, we used to watch movies, like, remember C Lab 2021 or C Lab
oh,
2020
don't think
on
so. No.
Adult Swim? Wow, Bandit. Whew.
I mean, I did watch some Adult Swim stuff, but yeah,
Yeah,
I'd
well,
probably have
you
missed
you
most of
missed a
it.
good one. You missed a good one on that one. But yeah, they used to make shows talking about this, and you felt like, oh man, that's so long ago. I mean, that's so far from now. But
Mm,
now we're already past that point.
mm,
So we are in that quote unquote future. So we shouldn't be shocked to see things like this. It's more like now it's here. Are you prepared? Because
yeah,
it's not going to stop.
yeah, no, for sure. And I think they would have to be new laws introduced into as to how things are used. Because I mean, it's kind of like deep fakes, I guess, to that sort of thing where or revenge porn or things like that where you take in somebody else's image, somebody else's likeness, somebody else's vocal sound or whatever, and put it in places where they did not give you permission to. So I think there would have to be some kind of, especially like if you consider, like, yeah, someone like Joe Rogan, for example, who, I mean, that dude gets in trouble a lot of stuff just anyway. So he's got a lot of stuff he's got to deal with just anyway. But yeah, you could potentially put out something that say sounds like Joe Rogan saying some wild outrageous stuff, and the average person might not know the difference, and now he has to go through all the efforts of trying to prove that it wasn't him, and and that sort of thing. So yeah, there would need to be some kind of, I guess, digital. I don't know how you do it, but something that you could be able to say, clearly be able to say, okay, this is a fake, this is a genuine thing. It has, I don't know, this brains. I don't know what you do. You know what I mean? But it's just something. I say I'm not an expert. Let experts figure out what exactly it is. But yeah, there would need to be. I would have think that there would need to be new laws introduced, and just new regulations and new ways of being able to tell what's genuine and what isn't genuine. That way, it's harder to just try to pin something on somebody and make it look like somebody did something when they didn't, because that's already difficult right now before all this AI stuff was kicking off. You know what I mean? So yeah, they have to have that as a safeguard. Um, you mentioned something actually that I was thinking I wanted to follow up on. I just blanked on what it was though. Damn, damn. Maybe this is why I needed an AI prompt to be like, "What did Sweet Bunny say?" This one might come in handy. Oh man. Oh well. Oh well. I'll try and remember it, and we'll see. Something to do with like. Oh yeah, that was it about journalists. Journalists. Okay, cool. So yeah, you mentioned about journalists. How you don't like when they sort of tell jokes and stuff like that. For
Yeah.
me, I don't mind if I'm reading an article and it's a little bit bloated. I don't mind that personally. It can make the for me it can make the article reading experience a little bit more enjoyable. What I would say that I don't like, and what seems to be very common these days, at least from in my experience, is when articles are like, you see a headline, for example, and then you start reading the article, and they spend paragraphs on stuff that has nothing to do with the headline, right? And it's just like going on and on and on about something that has literally nothing to do with why you clicked on it in the first place. And then it eventually gets to what the headline is about. that kind of annoys me because look, I get it. You got to make your money. You got to keep people on your site. You got to feed advertising. Blah blah blah. I understand that. I'm not trying to tell people they can't make their money. You got to make your money. You got to do what you got to do. But you don't have to bloat it with stuff that is so irrelevant to the reason you clicked on the article in the first place. Because I'm more likely to just be like, screw it, and just click off at that point. You know what I mean? I'm more like to be like, you know what, it's gone. So like, yeah, I don't mind articles being a little bit bloated. I don't mind if you want to crack a joke here and there. If if it's funny jokes, because it'd be funny, right? I don't mind. I don't even mind if it's a little bit biased, because in the day, people are going to be biased. I don't mind that. But can you please just keep it to the point where you're not bloating it so much with irrelevant things? That's where I'm like, no, come on, man, come on. Come on, now you're just taking a piss, okay? Now you're taking a piss.
I mean, my problem with it is when I read the news, I just want to know what's going on. That's it. I don't
Yeah.
want to know this person's opinion. I don't want them talking shit about whatever the hell is going on. Um, I don't care about their opinion. I just want the news. That's it. And yeah, you could say, well, just go find someplace else. But a lot of news sources do that.
Mm,
Somewhere, a site like TMZ, I get that because TMZ is different. It's like celebrity news, pretty much. They'll occasionally have some real shit going on and talk about that, but that's like big events where everybody is going to talk about it.
mm,
But for something where it's just a news site, just keep it straightforward. Just keep it straightforward. This happened at such and such at this location, da 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 da. The witness said this, etc., etc., etc. Done. I don't want, and this person's really a jerk whenever they said this about
mm.
that person. Like, fuck you, fuck your opinion. Just write the fucking news.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think there's. I mean, that's been like news has been written like that for the longest time at this point, where you read an article and they would try to shape how you feel about things. Which, yeah, I mean that can be annoying. I would say one of the reasons I don't mind it is because I'm pretty used to it with when it comes to news. It's like how it's always been from as far as I can remember. News has always been written in that way. Um, and I feel like I'm at a point. Well, hopefully, I'm at a point. I mean, I don't want to, sound too arrogant or whatever, but I'm hopefully at a point where I could still form my own opinion regardless of how the article is written. And I tend to, if it's something that I'm interested in, I'll tend to look at more than one source of it as well, just because, like, you know, one source might write it in a way where they focus on how good this one person was, even though that person was actually an arsehole, because they just want to write it like he was a hero or whatever. You read another source, they write it in a different perspective, and they could kind of be like, okay, well, let me try and put together what I think, of this. Um, so yeah, no, I get it. Like, biased news writing can be annoying, or biased news journalism can be annoying, and sometimes it gets so biased to the point where it's not even news. It's literally just, like you said, just somebody's opinion. Which, by the way, is fine. Everybody can have an opinion, but when you're framing it as news, you know what I mean? Come on, right?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you framed it as opinion piece, cool, whatever. But when you frame it as news, I don't mind people's opinions being in news, but yeah, it should be more news than opinion at the end of it, where you're not just like slagging somebody off for like 20 pages or whatever, and it's like it's like, dude, what actually happened? What actually happened? Oh, speaking of that, actually, well, kind of related, because in terms of AI producing news articles and in a way that you prefer, I did see somebody write this on Twitter where they responded to somebody's post, and it says something along the lines of, imagine a world where you could have a Marvel movie, for example, and use AI to make that movie, or to produce that movie exactly the way you want it, and have your own personal version of a Marvel movie, for example. Um, so I might watch a movie and be like, okay, make it so that Thanos does this, and Tony Stark comes in, and Ant-Man's does. I can have it exactly the way I want it, and you could have that movie and frame it the way we want it, and pretty much have two different movies of from that. What does that sound like to you as a potential for AI? I mean, by the way, I don't know if that is a potential for AI, but assuming it was, how does that sound to you as a potential for AI, the ability to create movies exactly the way you want it? That sound good to you or bad to you, or something else?
It sounds cool. I don't see anything happening like that until like, maybe a few decades from now, if it's gonna happen at all. I don't think it's too far fetched either. But yeah, I mean it's kind of cool. The only thing that I find to be that's gonna be bad is pretty much AI, like when deep fakes really start to kick into high gear and be shared. It's going to get to a point where a lot of people are going to, and they already do it with Photoshop, for example.
Yeah,
They're going to post things and say, "Man, I can't believe this," and whether they believe it or not, the person posting it and shit. Newsflash for some people that may not know, there's a lot of bots on fucking Twitter, and you don't even realize it.
yeah,
So that's why I'm more worried about when it comes to AI. Just it's going to be hard to decipher what's real and what's fake because if you don't know, you don't know. And fortunately, Twitter has been able to crack down and like you post something and it will go ahead and have like something to check the facts, which
mm,
is funny because it's Trump that inspired that. Um, when he started doing bullshit or whatever, and some controversy happened. I forgot what it was, but it doesn't really matter. Just know it started, as far as I remember, it started with Trump, and now we got checkers, and Twitter normally does it, and it's been helpful a couple of times for me personally. Like for example, I saw a video, and this person had a mason jar or something like that, or it looked like a mason jar, and they used it with their blender to mix whatever was in the jar. Now, uh, the checker, what it did was it said, "Be aware that this video is using tempered glass, which is different from your typical glass. If you were to use typical glass, it is going to be more dangerous, and chances are it will break." Stuff like
yeah.
that.
I noticed stuff out on Twitter recently. Actually, yeah, like what was it, context add-in and stuff like that. Yeah, in fact, yeah, I've noticed that actually, which is a pretty good addition, by the way, to Twitter. Um, uh, I was just thinking though that we were talking about sort of deep fakes and how things can, as AI gets more and more advanced and closer to what people can produce, and certainly with some images, it could. You could already have really good Photoshop images right now, right? So, the idea of creating a photo of some celebrity in a compromised position and making it look like a real photo, it doesn't seem that far fetched an idea as something that can be done, right? So in terms of having a way of making sure you can always know what's real and what's fake, I was just thinking that perhaps, and NFTs. And by the way, I don't know much about NFTs either, but I think there's something to do with like tokens and using ways of authenticating things, or at least that's part of their use. And perhaps people have been looking for a decent use for NFTs for a while. That could be something that they could be used for potentially, or something like that, where you could have ways of saying, "Oh, the NFT token doesn't match," and then it's not a real image, and it's not it's not a that it's generated by whether an AI
Hmm.
or somebody's Photoshop or something. But yeah, I think there would have to be some way, whether it's NFTs or something else, of knowing that, or being able to find out relatively easily what's real and what isn't. Otherwise, boy, a lot of people could be getting in trouble for stuff they haven't actually done. You know?
Now, I don't see NFTs being a way to verify that something is legitimate or not, because you could go ahead and do an NFT of something that's fake. Um, what I actually think they're going to do is have AI be able to decipher what's real and what's not for us. I think they're going to do that. And then
Okay,
that'll
yeah,
be the easiest thing to do, honestly, because it
okay.
is
So AI
possible
itself would be
to.
like is this AI generated? Yes, it is. If it not, no, it isn't. That sort of thing.
Yeah. It
Okay,
should
okay.
be it'll be able to break down because for example, when you have a photoshopped image, people who analyze pictures or whatever for a living, or whether they're just really into it and they know what they're doing, you're able to detect. I'm going to be using wrong terms probably because it's not, I'm not an expert in it, but um, they can tell it was pieced together by technology or whatever. Just like they could find out if you have a copy of an image or if this is the original image digitally. So definitely AI will be able to detect if something has been modified. I think that will include the voice. That's the
Mm.
best thing that they can do,
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Counteract the AI with AI.
yeah. With more
And
AI,
yeah,
AI's checking
and
itself,
yeah,
and
and that's
then
going to
you
be
AI
the
to
best
check
thing
the
to
AI
do.
that checks the AI to make sure
um,
that AI hasn't become compromised. And you need more AI to check that AI. It's just an AI inception of AI checking itself and being self-regulating. And I mean, it's not impossible, I guess, right? It's not. I mean, certainly it can learn from itself. In fact, I believe I did see. Yeah. I did see one thing about one article about an AI chat thing that was created that was programmed in. I think it was programmed in English only, and then they gave it a few characters, a few words in, I forget which language it was, Bengali, I think they said, but they gave it a few characters, so a few words in a language that it was not programmed with, and then from that it was able to teach itself that language. So yeah, all these things. I mean, they might not be necessarily right away. All these things that we're talking about now might not necessarily be right away, but they're not as unthinkable to say it now as it was 20 years ago. If we were talking about this like 20, 30 years ago, it'd be like, you know, maybe in the
mhm.
year 3000, it'd be like that, right? But
Yeah,
here we are, 2023, and it doesn't seem that unthinkable to be talking about machines that can mimic human conversations, at least maybe not exactly perfect, but to a point where it's good enough. You might be able to tell you might be always be able to tell the difference, but for what you might need it to do in terms of completing the task, it can do it good enough. All right. So that where does it go from there?
yeah,
Where does it go from there, and what does that mean for us? That's the real questions that are going to be asked, right? But yeah, it could definitely be a fascinating and scary time ahead, I think. But yeah, just to answer my own question a little bit. Sorry. I talked about the potential of creating your own movies through AI and stuff like that. I mean, for myself, it's both a cool idea and a terrible idea at the same time. Like, it's a cool idea in a sense that, if I was to come up with my own script for a Marvel movie, that I could put it into something and it could generate a movie for me without having to go through agents and all that sort of stuff, right? I could just put it in. I can generate something that's as close to what I wrote, on screen, and that's a really cool idea. But I think that's for me. That's just about where it ends. Just about where it ends. Like, I don't know if I'd want to be able to go to the cinema and be like, oh, then I don't know, Avengers 50 or whatever it is being released, and you could go to the cinema and you put like a goggles on, you put like I don't know, say VR goggles on, and you have to type in a bunch of stuff of what you want to happen. I don't think I'd want to do that. Certainly not on a regular basis, because I like the idea of watching somebody else's work. I like that, and even if it's not the way I would have done it, or I think this might be better, or this or that didn't make any sense, or this was just stupid. I think even though I might be thinking at the end, I like that I'm watching somebody else's work, regardless of how bad I think it is afterwards or how good, you know what I mean? That sort of thing. That to me is part of the art experience, is that you're not necessarily going to like everything or it's not always going to be the way you would have done it, and you're sometimes going to think things are silly or don't make any sense or this, that, and the other. But that is, to me, part of the experience. It's a range of emotions that it gives you, of thoughts and feelings that you don't get if you're just constantly doing everything, or doing it the way that you would have done it. You know, so I think it could, that sort of thing could be a novel idea in terms of, okay, it's cool to try it once in a while, but for me personally, I feel like I don't know if I would want to do that on a regular basis. But I don't know. We'll see. I mean, if it even ever becomes to fruition, I guess it depends on how other people feel about it and where it goes from there.
Yeah.
Potentially, potentially. We're just talking about potentials right now. Um, but yeah, I guess like to kind of bring this all sort of in, because I think we've discussed pretty much, I don't know about everything, but I think we've pretty discussed a wide range of things in pertains to AI. Or I don't know, was there other stuff that you wanted to bring up, or something that you think we haven't discussed?
The only thing I could think about now is again, AI. One of the main reasons why I'm for it is because one, it's convenient as hell. Two, is pretty creative in its own way. And I'm just interested in seeing what's capable.
Mm,
For example, I was, they give us business cards at our job,
yeah,
but I was looking online and they have a website that can actually create your own business card
right,
based
yeah,
on just keywords that you give it, certain descriptions or whatever. And they'll give you like a list of possible designs of your business card. And all you have to do is pay a fee for them to actually print out and send you the copies. And I think that's very interesting. You don't, at that point, you no longer have to rely on one person who's doing commissions or whatever, or some other company, whatever the case may be. It cuts out the middleman pretty much,
mm,
um, and for a way more convenient price. So again, uh, I think people are afraid of being replaced, but if you make yourself irreplaceable, and that's easier said than done,
mm-hmm,
then you have nothing to worry about.
yeah.
But
Oh, for sure.
yeah,
Adapting, and that's, yeah, that's the thing. A lot of us, one way or another, gonna have to adapt into this new world and figure out how we fit into the new world. And that's, yeah, I think that's where a lot of the difficulty is gonna lie. How do you fit into the new world? Not everybody's technologically savvy, and not everybody. I mean, I think there's always gonna be things you can do, um, but yeah, it's just gonna look massively different. I think once AI starts really taken off, as the potential for it is there. And I felt, what you said about a little while ago about artists having to step up. That to me is like a double-edged sword in a sense, where I like the fact that there's arts that exists that doesn't necessarily do much in terms of like big numbers and stuff, and like just the stuff that people want to create because they have a passion for it, and it might not always make it into the mainstream and stuff like that. And I guess there's always going to be artists that do that sort of thing, but I'd imagine that's going to get a lot harder to find, and a lot harder for people to justify, because we still got to have bills to pay, when it's all said and done, right? And when you have to come up with stuff that people can resonate with, so you can sell it and make money and do all the different thing. I think that's gonna, like you said, it's gonna get harder and harder and harder, right? So if that's where your mindset is, the justification of doing something much more nuanced and more of a passion project, it's not that you can't do it, but it's gonna get a lot harder to justify, right?
yeah,
So I feel like that's another shame, that you might get less and less of that. Um, but yeah, I do think ultimately people somehow, I don't know if we're gonna be all right in that grand sense of thing. I think there's gonna be potentially a lot of people not okay. Certainly in the earlier stages. But yeah, as you said, we have to figure out how to adapt to it. We have to figure out how to, you know, use it to our advantage as best as possible. Um it's not something that I think is going to be simple for everybody. In fact, for a lot of people, it probably won't be. Um, so how much the government cares about that, we'll have to figure out. They don't always seem to be caring a whole lot at the moment, so don't rely on that for any help, right? Um, but yeah, there's definitely going to have to be regulations and whatever else, and laws being looked at, and digital prints and whatever else they need to do to make sure people aren't, you know. I think the first time some politician gets uh, put in some compromising position that they didn't do is when they're going to start bringing in some of these laws and regulations and digital prints. When it affects them, you'll see that. But until then, it's like, it's gonna have to deal with it.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I guess the kind of overall thing is how it's always been: figure out how to best navigate the world as best as you can, and good luck. Good luck. It's gonna
And the
suck
fun
for a lot of
fact is,
people.
a
It's gonna
lot
be
of
great
things
for
that I was
some.
saying was already generated by AI.
Well, for real though.
Yeah.
Serious.
No, I'm joking.
Well,
But you
like,
believed me for a second.
I mean,
I'll tell you what.
here's a thing though. I guess because I mean we for those who might not know, which is probably most people, be when we do prep these podcasts in the sense that we come up with a topic and we look at things and notes and come up with stuff that we think of things that we'd want to say, and of course when we do it, it's not scripted, right? But we do think about the types of things we want to say beforehand, right? And make notes and this and the other. So yeah, I guess it's not an unthinkable thing that you could have went into like an AI chat GPT and be like, okay, what types of things should I send a podcast, and took a bunch of notes down and
Actually,
ran with that,
but
you
the
know?
thing is, it responds instantaneously. And honestly, I don't even have to type anymore. Like you could speak into your phone and it does voice to text, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
hypothetically, if I was talking right now, I can just ask a question, and I mean that could potentially happen. Not that I'm going to do it, but it could happen. You could ask Chat GPT a question, and it will pop up with a response instantaneously. You don't have to wait 30 seconds, 20 seconds, none of that. Within 5 seconds, it will have a response of paragraphs. That's how advanced this thing is so far. And
Yeah,
it's only in the early stages.
yeah. Though, I'm just
So,
kind of
yeah.
thinking though that I have never seen your face, so for all I know, you could be an AI getting to
It,
meet human.
I feel honestly, all jokes aside, I feel that it will be possible, and if not already possible, but possible in the near future, where you could have personalities and not even realize they're not a real person. It's fucking AI. It's certainly possible. I mean, they already tried something on Twitch a little bit where the AI was writing Seinfeld episodes or whatever, and was supposed to be like a never-ending thing. It got banned because of it was anyway. We're not going to get into it too much, but it got banned over a stupid joke. But the joke wasn't even like purposely offensive. It was more like sarcastically offensive, meaning like, yeah, maybe I should go ahead and do this and do that. Obviously, things that are obviously, terrible to do or say, but they weren't actually. Anyway, it's frustrating me even thinking about it. But my point is, an AI was doing that. So if an AI can go ahead and replicate my voice with inflections and everything, and all I have to do is pre-program a fucking personality and everything for it, yeah, it's possible.
Hmm. Yeah, potential to live forever through AI. After we all pass on and we depart this mortal coil, perhaps our loved ones can talk to us in AI form. Um,
They actually started doing that, or trying to. I think it was Amazon, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm all for it. I
would
wish
you want to
that
do that though? Talk to like someone who's passed away. I mean,
of
you
course.
won't be talking to them, of course, but you talk to an AI version of someone who's passed away. Would you want to do that?
Of course. Um, if it's like if the program could go ahead and mimic their personality, and I'm pretty sure it's going to get to that point where you can, you could potentially have a conversation that could have been possible. It doesn't have to be the real person, but if it was potentially possible, then that's good enough. It's better than not having anything. Now, I understand where people are on the edge of that. I mean, on the fence of that, but still, for some of us, where you may have lost somebody, you didn't really get to have a proper goodbye, or you really need to hear their voice to tell you some encouraging words or whatever, then yeah. Or even if you have like you have kids before your parents got to meet them or whatever, or your grandparents, there you go. I mean, it's not the same thing, but at least it's something. I feel like I would never stand in the way of that. I'm all for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for myself, I don't know if I'd want to do that with somebody who I was close with, because for me, I feel like if it could mimic their personality and the way they speak and the way they think and the types of things they say, if it could do that perfectly, right? And even though I know that I'm not actually talking to them, it's an AI, I get that. But even if it can mimic that perfectly to the point where it's indistinguishable, yeah, I don't think I want to do that with somebody who I was close with, because I feel like if it's somebody you're close with, for me, I would want closure of them passing away, and I don't know if I can get that if I'm talking to a version of them, or something that sounds like them on a regular, certainly not if you do it on a regular basis. I mean, I think it could be a cool thing as a novel, again as a novelty, to do it with, say, people from history, like historical figures. Though to be fair, if you're doing that at this point, you're not going to get their, you might not necessarily get their personality perfectly, because they've been dead for thousands of years already. But stuff like that, I think, could be cool. And I don't know. I guess with like people who are now, and if say people who are grown up in this AI world where everything you've been through could potentially be downloaded into a machine, and they could create this AI version of you that exists digitally. I mean, it sounds like a cool idea, but yeah, I don't know. I just think that for myself, I especially if it's someone who I was really close with, the potential to become in some level, I don't know if addicted is the right word, but being able to be at some level not being able to step away from this AI because it's mimicking them so perfectly that it's difficult to walk away from it. That you never really get that closure.
Hmm.
And I feel like that could end up doing more harm than good. So I don't know if I feel like it could be a cool idea, but I don't know if I'd want to do it. Certainly not with people that I'm close with, because it'd be like, nah, I'd need to not put myself in that situation where I could end up potentially speaking with like a robot version of somebody for the rest of my life,
Yeah,
and never really moving on. Yeah. So I don't know. That might be not for me.
I understand that.
Yeah. Um. But yeah, I think that that's pretty much everything. Uh. We're covering today. Everything. I mean, I'm sure there's loads to talk about AI, and loads more to talk about AI as the situations develop and the technology develops. And a lot what we talked about today was more potentials and stuff, which may or may not happen, but seems more likely than not. In a lot of these cases, so really just have to wait and see how it goes. But yeah, I think that's for now. It is going to be our conversation on artificial intelligence and its potentials and possibilities. But yeah, for anybody watching and or listening, certainly drop your opinions and views on that in the comments. Hit us up on Twitter, uncivilized art at uncivilized art. And yeah, any suggestions, any recommendations of topics you want to hear us discuss, drop those in the comments as well. But yeah, that's going to be all for the moment. So until whenever, if ever, maybe the next time we be completely replaced by AI, and you used to listen to AI versions of this pod. Maybe it's a possibility. But until then, peace.